Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to another episode of Haqiqatjou, where we discuss religion and politics, the two least controversial subjects. As always, I am your host, Daniel Haqiqatjou, and today we are talking about parenting and a viral clip that I saw over the weekend that really triggered me, and I became very angry watching this clip. As you'll see, and I just reacted, that this is just unacceptable. This is trash. Like, I can't believe what they're teaching the Muslim community. It's a clip of a parenting expert, who is giving a lecture at one of these big masajid in Dallas. It happens to be the masjid where Yasser Qadi is the religious director at in Plano, Texas. And the speaker is giving this longer lecture. And I went back and I watched the longer lecture. I saw that, well, not all of the advice is bad. And that's not an endorsement of the speaker. This woman, as an expert, I'm not giving that endorsement, but to give you full disclosure, full context, the entire lecture is not that bad. But this particular segment has been cut and clipped and spread on all different platforms, from Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. And people are just loving this advice that she's giving about parenting. And like I said, it triggered me because this is the kind of advice that is spread, not just by this particular female speaker. It's also spread, it's just in the collective consciousness of Muslims, unfortunately. And it's a product of liberalism. It's a product of this secularization of the Muslim mind. And this is how you infect the next generation. This is how you have people who have been affected by the liberal mind virus. They are going to infect their children, the next generation. So the pattern will continue. And this is unacceptable. This is something that we need to really stamp out. We need to, create this blockade so that the next generation doesn't suffer from the same debilitating mental problems when it comes to liberalism as we've suffered. Our generation, as millennials, speaking for myself, and increasingly Generation Z, the Zoomers, we've had to kind of pull ourselves out of the brainwashing. We've had to deprogram ourselves in a very painful way to realize that, okay, some of these truisms about freedom and equality and tolerance and the way to structure society and the purpose of life and the meaning of the universe, like, these things have been so heavily infected by the modernist paradigm that it's very difficult to extract yourself out of it. And unfortunately, the majority of Muslims really can't extract themselves out of it, or fully extract themselves out of it. So to just inflict the next generation with the same disease, the same brainwashing, that is even more objectionable to me. Like, don't we know better? Like, how are we in 2025 and we're still making the same mistakes? We're still preaching the same garbage. And it's very, this is the clip that we're going to react to, inshallah, is only 3 minutes long. It's not even like a very long clip, but it contains the seeds of disaster. And there's so much packed into that 3 minutes. And people were confused on Twitter because I'm reacting very strongly. I'm like, this trash, what is this retarded garbage? I'm just going off, and people are like, chill, bro. It's it's a 3 minute clip. Like, we don't even see what's wrong with it. Daniel clearly overreacting as usual. Daniel, we know he has some issues. So I wanted to dedicate an actual Haqiqatjou episode because it's worth that. It's worth going through the clip and breaking it down sentence by sentence and understanding what are the underlying modernist assumptions that are built into those sentences and how they are so damaging. They are damaging to the future of the ummah. And, you might think that's an extreme statement at this point, but we will see, inshallah. I hope by the end of the episode, I can convince you how this is the case. So we'll get into the clip, inshallah. But first, let me remind you to subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button. If you like our content, you want more people to see it, it helps with the algorithm. If you click that like button, you subscribe, you hit notification bell, and also leave comments in the chat. Keep the chat active, hopefully with relevant comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter. The link to the newsletter for MuslimSkeptic is in the description below. So be sure to subscribe to that. Leave your email. That helps us out as well. Okay, so now I'm going to play the clip for you. And first, we're just going to listen to it fully. Just go through it because I don't want to stop at every sentence. That will annoy you. Let's just watch the clip and then we will go back and analyze it. And I'll give you my critique, inshallah. Brother Altair is saying, I got that Western Muslim woman fatigue, not gonna lie. Yeah, maybe that's part of it. Like, maybe this is fatigue. Maybe that's what triggered me. I'm just so fatigued with a lot of this slop. And we'll get into that as well. Okay, so hopefully you can hear the sound. Okay.
Beware of the dangers of don't. Children should not grow up hearing no, 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 no all the time, especially when it's related to the deen. They should not grow up hearing, no, you can't eat this, no, you can't drink that, no, you can't wear this, no, you can't go there, this is our religion, we can't do that. It backfires. You want to turn it into a religion of yes, we can, but you have to be creative, and it requires a lot of creativity and thinking outside the box. For every haram that you stop your children from, you have to give them 2 halals that they can enjoy. This is important in the early years. In the early years, you don't want your kids feeling like, oh, my religion is just a religion of don't, and my religion is just a religion of can't. Right? So an example I'll give you, my community in which I raised my children, we didn't celebrate Halloween, right? Halloween is something many Muslims now do celebrate, but our community, we didn't. So instead of telling our children, we don't celebrate Halloween, or no, Halloween is Shaitan's birthday, I've heard some people say that. We say, you know what? We're going to have a lot of fun on October 31st. And we created an event called November's Eve. And it's kind of like a fall festival. We did not call it Halloween. We called it November's Eve. And we used to do it. A friend of ours had a ranch, and she had a bunch of animals. So we would have like, an experience where the kids got to ride ponies, and they got to pet animals and feed the goats and hold the chickens. And we would invite a professional storyteller to come tell family-friendly stories. We would have a big bonfire. We would have face painting, which, the kids had beautiful face painting done, nothing ghoulish or macabre or scary. In the evening, when the sun went down, we would pray Maghrib and Jamaat, and we would sing nasheeds around the campfire. I mean, it was just a very beautiful experience. So we homeschooled our sons up until 8th grade. My eldest went to public high school after 8th grade. And, when he was in high school, he had lots of friends who celebrated Halloween. And I asked him, I said, did you ever feel like you missed out? Do you ever feel like you missed out on a rite of passage, that we didn't let you do something that everybody else got to do? And he actually thought about it, and he said, you know what? If I didn't have somewhere to go every year on Halloween, if I didn't have something to do, then maybe I would have felt that way. But I never felt like I was missing out, because I knew I was going to see my friends. I knew I was going to get treats. I knew I was going to have fun. And so when kids in the neighborhood would ask, are you going trick-or-treating? Or are you going to this Halloween party or this haunted house? I was able to say, oh, I'm going to a fun festival at this one ranch. So when kids are younger, they don't want to have to explain. They're not, children don't want to proselytize. They don't want to have to defend their religion or explain why they don't do things. They want to just be able to say, yeah, I'm doing something fun too.
I'm doing something fun too. Okay, so that's the clip that we are going to dedicate the next hour, inshallah, to analyze. What's your reaction? How do you react to this? Because I obviously was triggered. I said some harsh words in reaction to it. And how do you react? Because when I posted this on Twitter, some people agreed 100%. They said, yeah, Daniel, this is really bad. Right on, spot on. Others did not agree with my reaction, and they said, well, what is wrong with this, Daniel? It seems like you're really being extreme by criticizing this. Like, shouldn't we give our children halal alternatives? Like, shouldn't we raise our children with kindness and love? And don't we want to allow our children to really grow up in society with a Muslim identity? It seems like this is exactly what is going to inculcate a Muslim identity for our children. Giving them alternatives so that they're not going and celebrating Halloween. They're not going and celebrating Christmas with everyone else. They're not part of those festivals, not part of those practices. Isn't that great? Isn't that a good thing, Daniel? Like, why would you be opposed to that? And I guess if you're coming from a certain perspective, it is a improvement, because there are Muslims in America who will say there's no problem sending your kids to participate in Halloween. There's no problem sending your kids to celebrate even Thanksgiving. This fatwa exists. This fatwa has been promulgated, actually. They say, when it comes to Christmas celebrations, whether it's at school, whether it is at your workplace, as long as you have the intention that you are only doing this on a cultural basis, it's not religious, you don't actually believe that your Lord and Savior has been born on this day, and you're not participating in that kind of Christian worship, it's purely secular Christmas, cultural, then no problem. This is halal, this is allowed. That fatwa has already been given and spread by supposedly conservative institutions and scholars, quote unquote. So compared to that, yeah, this is a more conservative thing. No, we're not going to actually participate in the Halloween or the Christmas or the Easter or the Valentine's Day. We're providing an alternative. And that's better. That's better. So how can you have a problem with this, Daniel? So tell me your reaction. That's fine. Like, you can have a reaction where I don't really see what's wrong with this. Daniel, please help me understand. That's an understandable reaction. I don't think that you'll necessarily anticipate everything that I'm going to say in this live stream, but many of you probably are feeling that there is something wrong here. There's something that's problematic, and you might not necessarily know exactly how to articulate it. So that's what we're going to talk about, inshallah. But to set up what I'm going to discuss in a moment, we have to divide. There's two main subjects here in this clip. One is the issue of not saying no to your children. That's one main idea. Should we ever say no to our children? And if we do say no to our children, is there a limit on how much we should say no to our children, telling them no, prohibiting them, restricting them? Is there a limit there? That's one main topic that she brings up. And she says, don't make the religion, or don't make raising your children about no. Don't make the religion no. That's one idea. The other idea is this halal alternative to holidays and festivals. That's the second issue. Both of them are extremely significant, and if you're a Muslim parent, this is something that you've grappled with, undoubtedly, just because of the inherent requirements of being a parent, but also because of social pressure, Maybe your parents are pressuring you to raise your children in a certain way. There are cultural pressures to have Muslims assimilate to the dominant culture. These are the things that every Muslim parent is going to be grappling with. And unfortunately, there is a lot of confusion on these issues and bad decisions are made. And this is something that we should care about. So even if you have kids, hopefully you'll listen to this stream and explain, and I'll explain my perspective. If you don't have children, you should still watch, because if you plan to have children in the future, or maybe you don't even plan for it, sometimes it happens, then you'll need to hopefully have these things in mind when you have to raise your own children. So as far as my expertise, like, for those who are going to ask, well, Daniel, where did you study? Yeah, I'm not a psychologist, alhamdulillah. And we should also get rid of this notion that psychology is going to provide the answers for parenting. Psychological studies, psychological books, psychological experts, we should always look at that material with a highly skeptical eye. And I've said this for many years, over a decade now. Why? Because psychology is the grandchild of liberalism. Psychology is liberalism applied to the human mind. So a lot of the assumptions that go behind psychology as a field, as an academic discipline, are based on a liberal paradigm, a liberal modernist paradigm. And we're going to see this as we go through the clip, inshallah. So that's why you should, when it comes to psychological advice coming from these experts, and they're all over social media, by the way, and you know, the target demographic is usually women. Women watch a lot of this material. I'm not saying there's nothing of value within the academic discipline of psychology, but there's a lot of trash. There's a lot of poison. There's a lot of disasters waiting to happen if you just follow this advice blindly and you don't refer everything back to Islam and an Islamic paradigm. So that's something that a lot of Muslims are not really aware of, and they are so trusting and naive when it comes to these psychologists, and they invite them to their community. And the thing about psychology, it has this kind of it's within the broader family professionally of medicine. You know, there's the medical field, and you have your physical health, and you also have your mental health. So it's a medical professional field with under that broader heading. And Muslims just have, culturally, a great deal of respect for doctors, a great deal of respect for the medical profession, and psychologists kind of slip into that. And they piggyback off of that, or they hitch their wagon onto that, and they get this kind of respect, even though psychology, let's be frank here, doesn't have the same kind of scientific or empirical rigor as the medical sciences. And if you know me, I'm not even saying that the medical sciences are really that high when it comes to scientific rigor either. I think, and this is something that we can discuss, or we have discussed, about, for example, 50%. The researcher is a Greek researcher in Stanford, Ioannidis. I believe his first name is John Ioannidis. And he had this landmark study where he discovered that 50% of medical research published in peer-reviewed medical journals, 50% cannot be reproduced. The results cannot be reproduced. So what that means is that you have a research paper that is publishing about some drug, is publishing about some kind of experiment that's done to understand the human body, physiology, what have you. 50% of those medical papers, the results cannot be reproduced if you follow the procedures that are outlined in those medical papers. So that's basically saying 50% of medical science is bunk. And that's medical science that is done, you know, in a lab, double-blind studies at these levels of rigor and precision that you'd expect from empirical work like that. 50% is basically bunk. And this is what has been discovered. So then imagine psychology. Psychology, again, like, so I'm not saying that we throw the entire discipline in the trash, but we have to be a little bit critical. We have to look at not just one study, not two studies. We have to look at meta studies. We have to look at criticisms of those studies, etc. That's all I'm saying. But unfortunately, you have Muslims who will be so trusting. Someone comes to the masjid and says, I'm a psychologist. I want to tell you how to raise your kids. I'm a licensed counselor, a licensed therapist. I want to tell you how to, how imams can be more emotionally sensitive to women in the community. I want to do a training. I want to do a training for your community on sex awareness, sexual education, because there's so much abuse and there's so much spiritual abuse that we have to train the imams, we have to train the community members. Or I want to come and teach you about parenting. I want to come and teach you about, and they'll sprinkle in some hadith, they'll sprinkle in some ayat of the Quran. And suddenly, like, oh, the sheikha has come. The sheikha has come and we're going to learn all about. This is a Trojan horse, because those individuals often, they are not critical of liberalism, they're not critical of feminism, and they're bringing that material into your community under the guise of a medical field of psychology. And we have to respect the doctors, we have to respect the experts, trust the experts. The Trojan horse, come on in, Trojan horse. Come on here, come on in. Here's the mimbar, Trojan horse. Just go ahead and stand at the mimbar and lecture our parents and our community. This is a disaster, and this is something that is very rampant in the United States. I'm not sure about other countries, but I'm sure that in the future, other countries will also follow the same pattern for their Muslim communities. Okay, so now let's go to the clip and start analyzing this. So again, the first theme is about saying no.
Right? Beware of the dangers of don't. Children should not grow up hearing no, 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 no all the time, especially when it's related to the deen. They should not grow up hearing, no, you can't eat this, no, you can't drink that, no, you can't wear this, no, you can't go there, this is our religion, we can't do that. It backfires. You want to turn.
Okay, so this is the first thing that she's saying. It backfires. If you say no, 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 and she gives examples. She said, don't eat this, don't drink this, don't wear this, don't go there. This will backfire. And this is the idea of, this is coming from a specific psychological theory called reactance theory. And this was proposed by a psychologist named Jack Brem, who died in 2009. And this reactance theory is pretty simple to understand. When you tell someone no, or you tell a child, no, don't do this, and you restrict them, the individual perceives this as a restriction on their freedom. You are restricting their freedom, and they will experience what's called reactance. Reactance. They will react by being motivated. They're in a motivational state to try to regain or reclaim that freedom that they perceive that they have lost. So this results in doing the opposite of what you have prohibited them to do. They will react by doing exactly what you have prohibited them to do. So this is what she's referring to. It will backfire. If you tell your kids, no, don't eat this, no, don't drink this, no, don't wear this, no, don't go there, it will backfire. They'll actually want to do it all the more. They'll want to do that all the more because of this motivational state, this reactance that they will experience. This is what Jack Brem and the psychological consensus has been on these kinds of prohibitions. And again, if you're a Muslim parent, you've definitely heard this. You've definitely heard this advice given Maybe your parents are a little bit more liberal. Maybe your parents are a little bit more culturally assimilated, and they tell you, and you're more conservative, and they tell you, don't pressurize your children. Don't tell them to pray. Don't tell them to fast. Don't have them wear hijab. Don't tell them no, 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 no. You shouldn't ever tell your children no. You're going to stifle them. You're going to stifle them, and it's going to backfire on you. As soon as they find any opportunity, they're going to do the exact opposite of what you want them to do. They're going to turn into absolute monsters. It'll be your worst nightmare. And they scare you in this way. They scare the daylights out of you. So maybe you have experienced this yourself with parents or relatives. But this is where it's coming from. It's coming from reactance theory. Now, how do we respond to reactance theory? It's very simple. This reactance theory is the way that liberals respond to the moral boundaries that they don't agree with, the moral restrictions that they don't agree with. But they don't have the same response to the moral boundaries that they do agree with. Right? This is something that I've raised in previous debates and live streams, and it's pretty easy to understand this critique. Because any moral boundary that you have, any moral theory that you have, is going to have restrictions. Is that not the case? It doesn't matter if it's Islam, if it's Christianity, if it's Judaism, if it's liberalism, if it's secularism, if it's feminism, communism. They all have moral boundaries. They all have a moral boundary is a restriction. A restriction is a prohibition. A prohibition is a no. You're not allowed to do this. Every religion, every moral theory has boundaries and restrictions and prohibitions. You cannot violate them. So doesn't reactance theory imply that we can't have any moral boundaries, because no matter how much you try to restrict people, they're going to be motivated to violate precisely those boundaries? Isn't that the logical implication or entailment of this reactance theory from Jack Brem? But liberals only use reactance theory in a selective way. They direct this criticism of boundaries against the moral boundaries that they disagree with. So liberals have a problem if you tell women to cover themselves, to be modest, to not engage in fornication. Liberals react to this when you when you tell them Islam restricts you from drinking and doing drugs and mixing and on and on. All of the restrictions that come in Islam, liberals disagree with. They say, oh, this is just going to backfire on you. This is just going to be backfire because of reactance. But you just easily can turn it around on them. When it comes to the liberal prohibitions, or the prohibitions that liberals agree with, we also say that this is going to backfire if you restrict people from doing it. So if you tell people don't harass women, don't harass women, don't catcall women, don't disrespect women. If you say that, that's only going to motivate men to engage in more harassment of women. It's going to only motivate men to engage in more catcalling of women, more sexual assault of women. If you tell them don't do that, don't be a sexist. If you tell men don't be a sexist, they're only going to be motivated to be more of a sexist. So we shouldn't tell them, we shouldn't restrict men from misogyny and sexism, etc., etc. Isn't that the logic of reactance theory? Don't be a racist. If you tell people, don't be racist, being a racist is bad. People are going to be motivated to be even more racist. People are going to be motivated to be even more bigoted. So you can't tell people not to be racist. For example, don't tell the Taliban, don't prevent women from getting an education. Don't prevent girls from getting an education. If you tell that to the Taliban is going to be more motivated to block little girls from going to school and learning how to read and write. So don't give these dictates to the Taliban. You're only going to get the opposite reaction. It's actually going to backfire on you. So Or don't tell people to not engage in minor marriage. If you tell them not to engage in minor marriage, they're going to be only more motivated to get married young. Right? So this is the response to reactance theory. And so the whole idea is completely bunk. The whole idea is completely ridiculous. How can you not tell your children no? Like, how can you not tell your children no? You have to tell your children no, not only for inculcating religious values, but also their own safety. When you tell children don't do this, don't do that, it's motivated oftentimes because you want to protect them. You want to protect them from serious harm. So when you aren't trying to protect your children from serious harm, you sometimes have to be very strict. You have to tell your children that you mean business because they won't necessarily understand. They don't understand the dangers or the larger consequences. So when you tell your children, don't ever talk to strangers, or don't ever go into a stranger's car, or don't ever go into a stranger's house. Don't ever walk out of wherever you are, at the park, at the playground, with a stranger. When you give that kind of admonition, it's very stern, it's very strict, and it is meant to scare your children. That's part of it. You want to scare them because they don't necessarily understand the severity of the consequences. And that's dangerous. Because they're children, their cognitive capacities haven't been fully developed yet. But children understand fear. They understand the fear of punishment. They understand an authority figure that is basically threatening them. Like, in the mind of a child, they can't really understand the dangers of what a stranger could do to them. Maybe the stranger wants to give them candy. Maybe the stranger wants to give them a kitten to play with. That's what the stranger has said to me on the playground. So I don't really understand why my dad and my mom don't want me to go with a stranger. It seems actually innocuous. Seems like I'm giving up something really nice. The candy or the puppies and the kittens, if I just go with the stranger. But I am afraid of my dad. I am afraid of my mom. They sounded pretty serious when they told me not to do it. And I know that if I disobey my dad and my mom, they're going to get upset and they're going to punish me. Maybe I'll get a spanking. They understand that. The child understands that. So if you give parents this direction, and the thing about going with a stranger, okay, that's a secular example, but what greater danger is there than a danger to their deen, a danger to their religion, a danger to their iman? That's even a greater danger that a child will not necessarily understand. And even human beings might not necessarily understand. Even us as human beings, the prohibitions, all of the prohibitions that Allah has given us, some of them we don't necessarily know the full impact to our souls, the full metaphysical, ontological impact to our akhirah, to the afterlife, to our place in the universe. When we engage in certain sins, when we violate certain prohibitions that Allah has given us, Allah hasn't given us the whole picture to understand the full impact of that. Even so, that this is our human condition, actually. But specifically with children, the respect of authority goes a long way to protect them. And in a similar way, as Muslims, as believers, our fear of Allah, the taqwa that we have of Allah, that goes a long way to protecting us. Not everything is something where we have the wherewithal, the ability to understand the prohibition, and that's certainly the case with children. So saying no, 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 no is sometimes extremely necessary. It's very important. It cannot be, you cannot have, as a parent, you cannot have hesitation to restrict. You have to set boundaries. You have to give these strong restrictions. Now, I understand the confusion that parents have with restricting your children, and I'll explain that in a second. Let's just keep playing this.
turn it into a religion of yes, we can, but you have to be creative, and it requires a lot of creativity and thinking outside the box. For every haram that you stop your children from, you have to give them 2 halals that they can enjoy.
For every haram, you have to give them 2 halals that they can enjoy. Wow. Like, is my whole job in life to be the fun coordinator of my children? Like, that's my initial reaction to that. But let me go back to this idea of negativity towards our children, because it's important. People have a legitimate concern about being too negative with children. And this is something that some of us have experienced with our parents. Not me, alhamdulillah, but others I know. They've experienced this where their parents really didn't meet the legitimate needs of their children. So children have legitimate needs, of course, when it comes to their basic needs in terms of food and shelter, but they also have emotional needs. Children have emotional needs, and as parents, we have to fulfill those emotional needs. And sometimes some parents will deprive their children of their emotional needs, and that comes through negativity. That comes through no, 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 no. And that's bad. That's bad. Your children, for example, seek your approval. Your children naturally, when they're born, they want to make you happy. They want to please you. They want to make you proud of them. That is the natural human response. And again, there's a parallel here when it comes to our relationship with Allah. Human beings naturally want to please Allah and make Allah proud of us. We want to be good for the sake of Allah. That's a natural, that's part of the fitrah. We have the same feeling directed towards our parents. We want our parents to be happy with us. We want them to approve of us. And this is something that the child will try hard to do. The child will try hard to do that. And if you deprive your children of that and you withhold it indefinitely, this is not good. This is a deprivation of your child of a legitimate emotional need, because they are seeking your positivity. They're seeking your approval. They're seeking you being proud of them, but you're saying, no, 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 no. You're just only negative. You're only critical. You're only criticizing them. You're only taking away from them, pointing out mistakes. This is not right. This is going to emotionally stunt your children, number one. It's going to really shut them down. And the big side effect of this is they're going to start seeking approval from other than you. If all they can get from you is criticism, disappointment, negativity, then they're going to look for other people for approval. They're going to start seeking the approval and behaving in approval-seeking ways towards others, like their peers, like people at school, like other people in society, like that boy that's going to give your daughter a little bit of attention, for example. So this is very dangerous. This is very damaging towards the psychology of our children when we're constantly negative. Now, everything has to be a balance. Everything has to be a balance. You have to, yes, sometimes your children deserve criticism. Sometimes they deserve punishment. Sometimes they deserve that negative feedback. And that is necessary. That's important. Otherwise, your child is going to become spoiled. Your child is going to become a failure because they don't do anything. They're just, lackadaisical. They don't put attention into the work that they do. They don't try to get good grades in school. They don't try to memorize Quran. They're not trying to pray their salah. They're acting out with behavior problems. They're hitting others. They're misbehaving. And you're just giving them approval? That's obviously going to spoil them. That's obviously going to result in children who are dysfunctional and they can't be productive members of society. So you have to be critical. That was the first part of what I was saying. You have to be critical with your children. You have to set boundaries. You have to tell them no. You have to show them negativity as a consequence of bad behavior. But when they do the right thing, when they are trying sincerely, when they are trying to behave and they are trying to achieve, you have to encourage them. You have to say that you love them, you're proud of them, that what they're doing when they do something good, like, oh, you really want to fast in Ramadan? Like, you're not required to fast in Ramadan because you're only 6 or 7 or 8 years old, but oh, that's amazing, we're so proud of you that you want to do this. And memorizing Quran, wow, you just finished another juz, or you finished memorizing another surah, this is great, this is wonderful, we're so proud of you. This is the kind of positive reinforcement that you have to give to your children, so that you're not just negative with respect to them all the time. This is damaging. You're depriving them of an emotional need that they have. So this is a conflation that happens. You have a generation maybe where emotional needs weren't met because of overly negative attitudes from parents. And the conclusion, the false conclusion that you draw from that is like, oh, well, the problem is saying no. The problem is saying no, so we're not going to say no anymore. No more saying no. Just be positive. Turn every haram into a halal. Turn for every haram that you take away, add 2 halals. Like, this is the wrong lesson that you've taken. You've taken the wrong lesson. What is damaging and what we need to address is shutting children down emotionally by being overly negative and not being balanced. And again, this is again the balance that we see from Allah towards his creation. Allah is not only telling us about the punishment of the hellfire. Allah is not only telling us that he is severe in punishing the disobedient. Allah also tells us that he is all merciful, that he is the one who is shakur, who appreciates and is grateful for his obedient servants who try to please him. Allah also responds to us in our prayers. This is the positivity. So Allah is balanced. And that is necessary for us psychologically, that we are seeking the pleasure of Allah. And Allah is saying that he appreciates, that Allah is appreciative of our efforts and will reward us with paradise for those efforts. And he's pleased with us. This is what we strive for. This is the kind of balance that exists, while also being fearful that we won't meet the expectations, that we will fall short, that we will not be able to reach paradise, reach the approval of our Lord. That's the balance. Parents have to also have this balance. And in fact, and this is the theme that I'm going to come to again and again in this live stream, is that the relationship that children have with parents is structurally critical towards the future relationship that a mature child will have with his Lord. The moral intuitions that are sharpened and developed because of the parent-child relationship are going to be critical towards the religiosity of that child and his relationship with Allah. And when there is a failure to properly sharpen and inculcate certain moral intuitions, that will hinder or damage the future relationship that the child has with Allah. And this brings me to the point, one of the main points I want to make in this live stream, is this shubha that people have nowadays, that many of our youth unfortunately are suffering from. This shubha that is known as the problem of hell. Let me explain this shubha, this doubt that we see really spreading amongst non-Muslims, amongst atheists. And the problem is simple to understand. The problem is, why does Allah punish us? Why would an all-loving God, an all-merciful God, punish us in hellfire? Why? Why is there a need to do that? And I can acknowledge that people do wrong things and they deserve to be punished. You know, people who are committing crimes, they're harming others, they deserve to be punished. I understand that. But why hell, an eternal punishment? That doesn't seem just. Because any crime that you commit is a finite crime. Why is a finite crime met with an infinite punishment of spending eternity in the hellfire? This is unjust. This is a doubt, this is a shubha that has spread, that has really taken root in the minds of some Muslims, unfortunately. And it's a doubt that is very pernicious, and some people have trouble addressing this doubt. And I think the reason that this doubt has spread, this is my hypothesis, I could be wrong, is that there is a fundamental moral intuition that has not been properly developed in these children. There's a moral intuition that has not been properly developed by the parents, and that has resulted in these children becoming adults or teenagers who have this doubt. And I'll explain what that means in a second. We first have to understand moral foundations theory. So these are 6 moral foundations that are discussed in moral psychology. And there are 6 of them. The care-harm foundation, the fairness/cheating foundation, the liberty/oppression foundation, the loyalty/betrayal foundation, the authority/subversion foundation, and then sanctity and degradation. What this means is that when we look at human morality across the entire human race, it doesn't matter what your religion is, doesn't matter what your culture is, the moral prohibitions and the moral teachings of all of these religions and cultures and ideologies, they fall within these bounds. You have certain teachings that have to do with not harming others. Don't harm others. Care for people. Be kind to people. Give charity. That's the care/harm foundation. A lot of moral teaching in Islam, when Allah tells us to give charity, when Allah tells us to give zakat, when Allah tells us not to harm others, or the Prophet ﷺ tells us not to unnecessarily harm others, not to kill others, not to steal from others, those are all under the care-harm moral foundation. And the idea of being a moral foundation means that these are human intuitions that they make sense to people. They naturally make sense to us as human beings. When I say don't harm someone unnecessarily, as a human being, that makes intuitive sense. Yeah, we shouldn't just unnecessarily harm people. That's wrong. You have an aversion to it. And you have an altruistic intuition that you want to help people. If you see a sick child, you feel bad. You want to help that child. If you see someone who is been harmed, you want justice to be served. That's an intuition that is a function of us as human beings. It's natural. It's human. So that's what moral foundation means. Then you have a fairness foundation. So fairness means that it treat people fairly. Don't be biased in how you treat people. So if you are, for example, if you treat white people in a certain way, you should treat black people in a certain way. You should treat Asian people in a certain way. You should be fair, regardless of race, for example. Or if you are going to give a reward to a good student because he got a certain grade, he made 100% on his test, then another student that gets 100% should get the equal reward. That's only fair. They both got 100% on their exam, therefore they deserve equal reward. This is the fairness foundation. And liberty foundation is related to fairness as well. Some people put liberty under fairness as well. It's not a separate thing, but it's the idea that people should have choices. They should be able to have, within limits, they should be able to choose how they want to do things for themselves. That's another intuition that people have. There shouldn't be any kind of unjustified restriction on people. What is or is not justified, that's what can be questioned, but that's still a moral foundation. Loyalty and betrayal. Being loyal to people who are in your group. This in Islam is wala wal bara. Loyalty to the in-group, to the Muslims, to the believers, and disloyalty to out-groups, to the enemies of Allah. Every religion has this kind of distinction between in-group and out-group. Cultures as well, ideologies as well. Now, authority is what we're going to focus on, but sanctity means below that. Sanctity means like being respectful for what is holy, respecting what is sanctified, not engaging in blasphemy. Blasphemy, and this is why atheists, for example, or liberals in general, they don't understand many of these moral foundations. Why? The atheist will say, like, who cares if I make a cartoon insulting the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Who cares if I rip up the Quran? Who cares if I make an obscene gesture towards this or that? They don't understand the sanctity foundation. But a Muslim, for example, or a Christian, when it comes to their the things that they consider holy, or other religious people, they are horrified, they are shocked, they are morally outraged if you violate sanctity because of that moral foundation. But when it comes to the liberal mind or the liberalized mind, their moral foundations are in fairness and care and harm. The top two are highly, highly developed. And they're developed through education, through how they were raised, through their parents, through media, through the influence of the culture, the liberalized culture. The fairness and the care foundation are overdeveloped, and everything else, meaning the bottom three, loyalty, authority, and sanctity, those are underdeveloped. Those have not been developed to any extent at all because they're constantly being undermined. They're constantly being undermined. And this is the atheist critique of so many of the prohibitions in Islam, the liberal critique of prohibitions in Islam, like sanctity, for example. Why should we prohibit tattoos, for example? Islam prohibits tattoos. You shouldn't be tattooing up yourself. You also shouldn't be wearing these kinds of earrings or nose piercings and piercing your body. This is something that violates the sanctity of the human body. Because the body is an amana from Allah. Allah has given us this amana, and we are not at liberty to do whatever we want with that body. This is the sanctity foundation that people naturally have. But because of liberalism, that moral foundation has been de-emphasized, and instead the liberty foundation has been overemphasized. Well, why can't I do with my body whatever I want? I should be able to do with my body whatever I want. If I want to tattoo it, if I want to pierce it, if I want to commit suicide, if I want to harm myself, if I want to do drugs, should be able to do any and all of that. Because it's my choice. I'm at liberty. But if the religious person tries to explain this, for example, if I try to explain to an atheist, no, but you don't understand. You are degrading yourself. You are degrading your body. The atheist is not going to understand that. The liberal is not going to understand. So what? Maybe I want to degrade my body. How is this harming anyone else? How is this a problem for anyone else? There's no harm. It doesn't violate the harm principle. This is how atheists and liberals respond. Because their care/harm foundation has been so overdeveloped that all of morality, what you ought to do and what you ought not to do, is determined by fairness, care, harm, liberty only. So they don't have the mental capacity to understand the argument that a religious person would make. That no, don't tattoo yourself, don't pierce yourself, don't off yourself, because that is contrary to the sanctity of your body. They can't understand that, right? It's like trying to explain color to a colorblind person. That's a good way to think about it, actually. Like the people who are have been liberalized so much that they only have the top 2 or 3 foundations. It's like they can only see with 3 colors. They can only see black, white, and gray. So if you try to explain red to someone like that, they're not going to get it. Like, what do you mean? I don't understand what you're talking about. They're blinded. Same with the loyalty foundation, and same with the authority foundation. When Muslims say that we believe in Allah because He is our caretaker, He is our provider, He is our Lord. But it's not just that. Allah is also the creator. Allah is the creator, and we're His slaves. And that relationship and the greatness of Allah just predisposes me as a person to want to worship Him and obey Him and submit to Him. That is because of Allah's authority. That is a moral foundation. That's an intuition that human beings have. All of these are coming from the fitrah, obviously. This is the way Allah has created us. But that's the authority foundation. Someone who doesn't, that foundation has been degraded or hasn't been really developed. They don't understand. Like, why should I worship Allah? Why? And they ask this question because their sense of right and wrong, what we ought to do and what we ought not to do, is purely determined by care and fairness. So when I say, well, we worship Allah because He's Allah, He's our Lord, He's our creator, they can't get it. It does not compute. And it becomes offensive to them when you say, by the way, Allah is the authority who also has the authority to punish us, to hold us accountable, to punish us, and to even put us in hellfire if we do not obey Him. And the usual response that these atheists or these liberalized people, the people who have been affected by liberalization, they say, well, I didn't ask to be created. I didn't ask to be created, so why should I obey? Why should I take Him as an authority? And the only kind of reason that will make sense is something transactional. Allah has given me, therefore I give Him. And it has to be by consent. I consent to the transaction. And since I didn't consent to being born, therefore there is no transaction that is valid between us. And it's a violation. It's oppression if God says that I go to hell or I'm going to be punished. That's a violation of my liberty because I have not consented to a transactional relationship with God. They can't see beyond that because they don't have this other dimension to morality. The authority dimension to morality that is just as intrinsic to our sense of right and wrong as fairness is. It's intrinsic and as inscrutable. Because when it goes down, when it comes down to it, and I've raised this point when I was debating Matt Dillahunty. We're debating atheism and the morality of Islam. And I put this point very simply to him. I was like, justify the harm principle. Why should we not harm other people? Why should we not harm other people? Can you give me a reason? Can you give me, maybe in the chat, you guys can think of, why should we not harm people? Why should we not harm others unnecessarily? Like when you see a poor defenseless person, why not kick them? Like maybe just kick them. Can be funny. Harming others can be funny. You can get joy out of that. So why should you not do it? What reason is there? And the point is that some things are just axiomatic. There's no reason to it. It's just we know that we shouldn't do it. We shouldn't harm people. Obviously, that's wrong. There is no further reason that needs to be given. And we have that, and we can accept that when it comes to the harm principle, because the care harm foundation has been so overdeveloped that we accept that intuition and we take it for granted and we don't scrutinize it further. But the authority foundation is the same thing. The authority foundation is the same thing. At a certain point, Allah is the authority. Allah is the creator. There is no further reason that's needed for you to be justified in obeying him, in submitting to him, in seeking his pleasure. He is the authority. That's it. That's the fact. That's the bedrock fact that then compels you to behave in a certain way. Just like the intuition not to harm others compels you to behave in a certain way, such that you don't harm others. It's exactly parallel. But because a liberalized education has degraded all of our moral intuitions other than the top three, the care, fairness, and liberty foundations, these other moral foundations are not as intuitive, they're not as strong, they're not as compelling. And this is why you have children who grow up asking and being very confused. Why should I obey Allah? Why am I required to obey him when I did not consent to being created by him? And then Allah is going to punish me if I don't obey? They have this doubt. They have this doubt because they're only thinking about the relationship with Allah transactionally in terms of fairness. What is fair? Fairness is something that applies to equal parties. You know, if you're a student in a class, or you're a citizen of a country, or you're a citizen of the world, you're a human being, then all human beings should be treated fairly, and the moral foundation of fairness applies to equal beings. But there's no equality between us as a creation and Allah, the creator, so the fairness foundation is not even applicable to morally judge our relationship with Allah and the way that Allah decides to treat us as his creation. The way to our relationship with Allah and our status with Allah is primarily determined by the authority foundation. Who is the authority? And who is the one who has to submit and be the subject and obey? But that foundation has been degraded by education and by the upbringing of children. How? It's exactly this attitude of don't say no to children. Don't say no to children. And I experienced this myself as a parent. Okay, so I have my boys. I have 5 boys. One of them is almost a teenager. And the way that, because I'm also a product of born and raised in the liberal West, we think that we have to explain everything to our children. If we tell our children, no, you can't do that, or do that, it has to be followed by some kind of explanation. It has to be followed by some kind of justification. And this is good as far as it goes. And I'm an advocate of when we are teaching our children Islam and we want to explain to them why they shouldn't be drinking or doing drugs or mixing with the opposite sex or behaving in immodest ways or whatever. These are the wisdoms behind it. We should explain. But that can also go too far to such an extent where the child has the expectation that I will only obey as long as I understand. I'll only obey as long as it makes 100% sense to me and I have no objections to it. Then that's the condition for my obedience. This is a bad result. And this undermines authority, because authority as authority cannot be transactional, and it can't be on the basis of only if I understand will I obey. If that's the way that your child thinks, your child doesn't think of you as an authority. Your child thinks of you as a partner, like as a life coach. Your child thinks of you as like a roommate, who just, has some good advice for you. You can take it or leave it as long as you understand it. That's not the relationship that you should have with your children. Your relationship with your children is as an authority. You are an authority over your children. So there are certain things that, because I said so. You do it because I said so. No more questions, no more objections, and you better like it too. You're going to do it what I say, and you're going to like it too, and you're going to have a smile on your face. That is, for certain things, you have to put your foot down. For certain things, you have to say, okay, I'm done. Like, this is not about, I'm not asking for your input. I'm not asking for your talk back. You just do it the way that I say it, because I said so. I'm the authority. There has to be a place for that in your relationship with your children and your upbringing of your children. And the way that the liberal mind thinks is that, but that's dictatorial. That's authoritative. That's wrong. You're oppressing your children. You're not oppressing your children. If you condition your children to think of that as oppression, then of course they're going to think of Allah as an oppressor. Of course they're going to think about Islam as being oppressive religion, and Allah is oppressing them. Allah is a tyrant that's terrorizing them, that's suppressing them, oppressing them. That's what they're going to think. If you as a parent fail to inculcate this proper sense of authority, this is my hypothesis, that a generation of parents, because of the influence of liberalism, they have not properly been authorities in their lives of their children. They've been more like partners or life coaches. They haven't been authorities. Authority means because I said so. Because I said so. They have shied away from that line. They've shied away from putting their foot down in that way. That my authority is inscrutable. You cannot question it. You have to just obey, and you have to like it. And this is something that has to be inculcated at a young age. At a very young age. If they're teenagers, it's too late. It's too late because you've already set the expectation that you're not really an authority. You can only tell them things to do or not do if you bring enough explanation with it. If you bring enough justification with it. It's too late if they're teenagers. This has to be inculcated much earlier on, because that's when their moral foundation of authority foundation needs to be developed. It needs to flourish. It needs to be sharpened. And that's what's necessary for them to appreciate the authority of Allah. To appreciate that Allah is the authority, and if He says haram, it's haram, and we don't do it. We don't go near it. We don't question it. Sami'na wa ata'na. We hear and we obey. That is the attitude that believers have to have, is it not? We hear and we obey. If you want your children to have that attitude and relationship with Allah of sami'na wa ata'na, they need to be telling you sami'na wa ata'na when you give them directives. If they are missing that, then they're going to grow up and have serious shubuhat, serious doubts about the authority of Allah. And it's going to rear its ugly head. And that's what we're seeing. That's my hypothesis. The reason that we see this specific shubha blowing up online, and atheists now, this is like their go-to argument. They try to bring doubts to the minds of Christians and Muslims with this issue of hell and eternal punishment. And it strikes a chord because the authority foundation has not been properly developed because of poor parenting practices. That's my hypothesis. That's what I think has happened. So, and then we have this speaker who is inadvertently furthering those wrong practices by telling parents, don't say no. Don't say no. Any haram, replace it with 2 halals. That's not the attitude of an authority. An authority is not in it to purely to please his subjects. No, if I say haram, I'm not going to give you two halals. Haram is haram. I told you no. I told you you can't do this. Case closed. You just need to hear and obey. Unfortunately, parenting can lose that. And I tell this to parents. I tell them, like, because I've known just when it comes to our social relationships, there are other families, and they have adopted this kind of thinking that, yeah, we don't want to tell our children no. We don't want to tell our children, don't do this, don't do that. It's too negative. They're going to have a complex, blah, 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 blah. They're going to have reactants. They're going to overreact and do everything that we prevented them from doing. Why? Like, if you are not going to give them a sense of authority, and an authority that will tell them no and set limits for them in a inscrutable way that they can't, like, necessarily understand or judge, then how are they going to have a relationship with Allah? How are they going to be good Muslims in a religion that's full of prohibitions? And some of those prohibitions are also inscrutable. Like, as human beings, we don't necessarily know the exact reasons for some of the prohibitions that Allah has given us. Like, why, for example, is riba prohibited? Now, you can give wisdoms for why, the hikmah of riba being prohibited, but, and this is actually cited in the Quran, like the kuffar, the disbelievers, they respond by saying, well, trade is like riba, or riba is like trade. Like trading, buying and selling. Like, this is just another form of buying. Riba is just another form of buying and selling. So why is it prohibited? And that is something that you can explain in terms of hikmah, the social consequences of a society that's overrun with interest-bearing loans, and how you can have severe consequences for the entire globe, the global economy, when it's an economy that's dominated by riba. You can mention all of these social harms that come with it. But is that the reason? Like, how can we know? Allahu alam. Only Allah knows the reason. And if he hasn't specified it in Revelation, then there's only speculation. We can only talk about the wisdoms. Like, what are the positive impact, the positive consequences of prohibiting riba, not engaging in riba? In usury. But we still obey, even if we don't know the full reason. If we don't understand the full reason, we hear and obey. Sami'na wa ata'na. And we don't feel resentful about it. We don't feel angry. We don't feel like we are being oppressed because of it. That's important psychologically. That feeling of sami'na wa ata'na and being fully satisfied with that comes because of a healthy authority foundation that we need to have. So hopefully you understand what I'm explaining to you here, because it's a little bit more complicated of a point, but I think it's very important. And it's very important for the psychology of our children. Like, fairness, if everything is in terms of the fairness and care foundation, that's a moral foundation dealing with people, like other people that we deal with. But that's not the foundation. But Allah is not a person, like a human being that we have a transactional relationship with. So the fairness foundation doesn't apply in the same way with Allah. The authority foundation is what becomes critical. So, yeah. Hopefully that is clear for you. Now let's continue with the clip. Sorry.
Requires a lot of creativity and thinking outside the box. For every haram that you stop your children from, you have to give them 2 halals that they can enjoy. This is important in the early years. In the early years, you don't want your kids feeling like, oh, my religion is just a religion of don't, and my religion is just a religion of can't, right? So an example.
This is the opposite. Like, young children, they don't have these kinds of thoughts. Young children don't have the life experience to have that kind of thought. Like, my religion is a religion of can't. Like they don't, children that are under, let's say, 6 years old or 7 years old, they don't think in that terms of way. Their whole world is you. Their whole world is you as their parent and their family and what they see like in the home. Like that's their entire reality. It's only if you have really gone out of your way to expose your children to a different world of another religion, where they see other religions as equally valid and other lifestyles as equally valid to your own, where they would have that kind of thought, like, oh, my religion, as opposed to the religion of others, is a religion of cant. Like that kind of comparison only will arise if you have really gone out of your way as a parent to expose them to not only like other religions, other cultures, but also trying to set those different cultures and religions as equivalent to Islam or counterparts to Islam. If you haven't done that, then the thought would never come, the comparison would never come to their minds. So this is a fundamental assumption that she's bringing to the table, and it already indicates something going very wrong with the upbringing of your children. Your children from a very young age need to understand the world according to Islam. Their entire understanding of the world is Islamic. It's imbued with Islam and Islamic assumptions and the Quran and the teachings of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's the lens by which they see the world. Like that's they're breathing Islam in that way. Whereas the secular assumption is that children are born as a blank slate. And as a blank slate, the world is filled with different options. You have different cultures, different religions, different beliefs, different norms. And then the child is exposed to that and is just going to take, okay, this religion and compare it to this religion and compare it to this norm and compare it to this practice. And then your job as a parent, as a Muslim parent, is just to cheerlead the Islamic options, cheerlead the Islamic choices, and say, oh, the Islamic choices are the right ones compared to the Christian or the Jewish or the atheist or the American cultural ones. And you have to basically be a lawyer for Islam. This is a secularized understanding of psychology and the upbringing of your children. No, your children, first of all, have a fitrah, so they're not a blank slate. They're already inclined to want to be Muslims, to worship Allah. They're already inclined to be modest. They're already inclined to avoid the filthy things. They're already naturally inclined towards that. That's the fitrah that they're born with. And then your job is not as a lawyer. Your job is only to reaffirm that. To reaffirm that and to strengthen that, to develop that. So that they grow up with their entire paradigm, their entire understanding of the universe and themselves as Islamic, as Muslims. And that is so key to the raising of your children. And parents ask, like, well, how do I do that? How do I do that? It's already made easy for you because of the fitrah. Number 2 is Quran. Raise your children memorizing the Quran. If you have your children memorize the short surahs of the Quran in Juz Amma, at the last juz of the Quran, the short surahs, Qul Huwallahu Ahad, and the rest of Juz Amma, those surahs are so amazing for developing an Islamic paradigm, developing an Islamic understanding of the world. Why? Because those surahs are concerned with what? Iman and kufr. What is belief and what is disbelief? What is good and what is evil? Being slaves to Allah, submitting to Allah as His slaves versus being intransigent, being disobedient, being rebellious. This is the world. This is creation. And this is what we inculcate our children with from the earliest stages, as soon as they can talk, even before that they can talk. And that really that shapes their entire understanding of who they are and the world around them. And it will affect these subjects that she's about to talk about, like holidays.
So an example I'll give you, my community in which I raised my children, we didn't celebrate Halloween, right? Halloween is something many Muslims now do celebrate, but our community, we didn't. So instead of telling our children, we don't celebrate Halloween, or no, Halloween is Shaitan's birthday, I've heard some people say that, we say, you know what? We're going to have a lot of fun on October 31st. And we created an event called November's Eve. And it's kind of like a fall festival. We did not call it Halloween. We called it November's Eve. And
yeah, Halloween, that is what some of these masajid call it. They call it Halloween, and it's the same as Halloween. Like, you're giving candy, the kids dress up, except instead of going like to the neighborhood to get candy, they go to the masjid. And they call it Halloween. And her big insight, her big contribution from her community is that, oh, we don't call it Halloween, but we do everything else. We do all the candy, the dressing up, the face painting, the sitting around a bonfire and telling spooky stories. We do all that, but we just don't call it Halloween. We don't call it Halloween. That's too close. We call it November's Eve. Because October 31st is the day before November. So November's Eve, just like we have Christmas Eve before Christmas, we have November's Eve before November.
And we used to do it. A friend of ours had a ranch, and she had a bunch of animals. So we would have like, an experience where the kids got to ride ponies, and they got to pet animals and feed the goats and hold the chickens. And we would invite a professional storyteller to come tell family-friendly stories. We would have a big bonfire. We would have face painting, which, the kids had beautiful face painting done, nothing ghoulish or macabre or scary. In the evening, when the sun went down, we would pray Maghrib in Jamaat, and we would sing nasheeds around the campfire. I mean, it was just a very beautiful experience. So we homeschooled our sons up until 8th grade. My eldest went to public high school after 8th grade. And, when he was in high school, he had lots of friends who celebrated Halloween. And I asked him, I said, did you ever feel like you missed out? Do you ever feel like you missed out on a rite of passage, that we didn't let you do something that everybody else got to do? And he actually thought about it, and he said, you know what? If I didn't have somewhere to go every year on Halloween, if I didn't have something to do, then maybe I would have felt that way. But I never felt like I was missing out, because I knew I was going to see my friends. I knew I was going to get treats. I knew I was going to have fun. And so when kids in the neighborhood would ask, are you going trick-or-treating? Or are you going to this Halloween party or this haunted house? I was able to say, oh, I'm going to a fun festival at this one ranch.
Yeah, I'm not going to that haunted house. I'm going to another thing, another festival. So my commentary on this, I mean, I have a lot to say. First of all, I think that this is another example of Muslims following the Jews and the Christians down the lizard hole, handspan by handspan, as the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions. This is a very Jewish approach to cultural assimilation. We don't have, because if you look at the Jewish community, they don't have Christmas, they have Hanukkah. They don't have Easter. Easter is the Christian holiday. They don't have Easter, they have Passover. They have the Jewish version. So everything is like a Jewish version. According to Orthodox Judaism, women can't show their hair. So what do the Orthodox Jewish women do? They wear wigs. They wear wigs because it's not, you can't show your actual hair, but you can wear a wig that looks like hair. So technically, I'm not showing my hair. Technically, I'm not celebrating Christmas. Technically, I'm not celebrating Easter. So this is like a Jewish approach that, unfortunately, the Muslim community in the West, some elements of the Muslim community in the West has adopted. We don't have Halloween, we have November's Eve. This is quite a shame. Second point, it's very impractical. If you're going to take every holiday and have an Islamic alternative, Islamic in scare quotes, obviously. Okay, Halloween, Christmas, Valentine's Day, which is regarding Saint Valentine. You also have, what's it called? St. Patrick's Day. All of these kinds of holidays, you have to have an Islamic alternative. And it's okay because it's technically not the same thing. Third point, even though you're not celebrating, quote unquote, the holiday, the whole point of a holiday is marking a day, marking a period of time, and saying that that time is special. And it's special, why? Because of a larger fact about the universe. So Christmas is special. Why do we celebrate Christmas? The Christians say because this is the birth of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. That's what makes Christmas special. That's why that time of the year has to be marked with an occasion, with a Christmas holiday. Holy holiday comes from holy day. Halloween, similarly, has that kind of metaphysical baggage. It's lost in the collective consciousness of the American public or the Western public, but it's still marking a time. It's still marking a day. So Muslims, by marking the day, even if it's something unrelated, even if the practices are unrelated, like just going and sitting around or going to a petting zoo at a ranch and reading stories around a bonfire, even though it's not exactly the same kind of rituals, the same kind of practices that are taking place, you're still marking the time. You're still having that reverence because you're gathering resources, you're organizing, you're coming together on a specific day every year. So your practices are still being dictated by another metaphysical system, another paradigm. It's just by a different name. You've just put a different label on it. And you're still imitating. You're still imitating another way of life, another metaphysic, another paradigm. And that's what's ultimately problematic. That's what's ultimately problematic about Halloween. What is getting candy, like giving candy to children, having fun outdoors in the fall, especially when the weather in the United States is very nice. It's crisp air. I actually love fall weather. The leaves on the trees change to these beautiful reds, yellows, and oranges. Again, there's like this cool breeze that comes through, the fall breeze that hits you. You like to be outside. There is also the smell of wood burning because people start using their fireplaces or they start making these campfires. So you smell wood outside. It's a very pleasant smell. I love the fall season. There's nothing inherently wrong with enjoying that. There's nothing inherently wrong with the season or with getting candy or whatever. What's problematic is marking a specific day. That's the big problem, and that's what's being retained in their Halloween. So that's point number 3. And obviously we know that in Islam, what is metaphysically significant is what Allah says is metaphysically significant. There are certain times that are they're actually objectively significant. Why? Because who decides that? Allah decides that. Allah has decided that Ramadan is a special time. The first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah is a special time. The last 10 nights of Ramadan are a special time. And Eid al-Fitr marks a very special time. Eid al-Adha marks a very special time. So we celebrate it. We enjoy it. We mark that time. And that's why we're Muslims. So this is the difference. This is what she is failing to understand. And now I want to go to like the bigger points. I'll let her finish the rest.
When kids are younger, they don't want to have to explain. Children don't want to proselytize. They don't want to have to defend their religion or explain why they don't do things. They want to just be able to say, yeah, I'm doing something fun too.
This is pure projection. Children actually love to proselytize. Children actually love to proselytize. Children love, and again, this is the difference. Like, she's missing something so critical and so fundamental that I mentioned at the beginning of the stream, is that you are not orienting your children to Islam. You are not implanting that Islamic worldview or paradigm to your children, because if you do that, then your children have such a sense of izzah. They have such a sense of pride at being Muslim, and they understand the world in terms of Islam. It's like so natural to them that your children don't even want to celebrate Halloween. Your children don't even want to celebrate Christmas. Like, why? That's disgusting. Like, they actually look down on these things, and they have an aversion to them. They have an aversion to the practices of non-Muslims. Really. That's what's natural to children, and it doesn't take much. Trust me on that. It doesn't take much to get them to that point, because if they are memorizing the Quran with meaning, they're understanding the surahs, they're understanding what Allah is requiring of the believers, they develop that love for Allah, they develop that love for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they develop the love for the identity that they have as Muslims, and you're constantly reaffirming it. By the way, remember what I mentioned about this natural seeking approval behavior of children. You're giving them all the positive reinforcement that they need to be proud Muslims. They are going to have an aversion to Halloween, and they're going to try to convince their friends not to do Halloween. They're gonna be proselytizing. You're gonna have to hold back your children. That's like our experience. Like, I have to, because when you're with family or with friends, you don't want every gathering to become a fight. You don't want every gathering. And the reality is, yeah, you have Muslim friends or Muslim family or non-Muslim friends, and they're not at the same place that you are at, right? Whatever you want to call it. They're not practicing, or maybe they're doing certain things that are, not ideal. They're not the best. And you don't want every meeting, every social gathering to become a fight. But your kids, they're ready to go. They don't have a filter, right? Your kids don't have the same filter and the same kind of social niceties that you have. And that you have to be practical, right? You have to be practical. So with our kids, like, we have to tell them, like, okay, if, this relative of yours, they don't have the same ideas, and they're trying their best. We have to be gentle with them, and we don't want to fight with them, and we don't want to make them angry. So we have to be gentle, and because the kids are ready to go. My kids, they want to give a lecture. They want to go and say, actually, that's wrong, right? And mashallah, like, that's the fitrah, that's the natural way, the innocence that children have that you lose over time. But it's easier, like, if you've done a good job of inculcating the Islamic paradigm into your children, you're gonna have to hold them back. You're gonna have to tell them, like, okay, we don't need to have another fight, we don't need to have another argument, like, that's not the purpose. Like, there's different ways to do amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar. Sometimes you have to do it through gentleness and diplomacy on an interpersonal level. Like, that's what's necessary. And people get confused about that. People say that Daniel is so aggressive and he's so undiplomatic, and Daniel is just yelling at people. But there's a difference, okay? I'm a da'iyah. I am doing da'wah online. I'm preaching Islam. I'm teaching different aspects of Islam to people, as far as I know, to the limit of my knowledge. And that is the teaching of Islam. That's different from an interpersonal relationship that you have with someone. When you have for example, a parent, or you have a sibling, you have to be diplomatic. You want to do amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar in a way that's going to encourage them, that is going to have positive effect, not turn them away. That's interpersonal dawah. That's very different. That's very different than preaching a message. If you take the interpersonal approach and you preach it in that way, it'll backfire. It'll have a major negative consequence because you're only appealing to the lowest common denominator, and not everyone will respond positively to that. Like, a lot of people will respond to that by thinking that you're watering things down. For example, let me give you like, imagine you have a sister and the sister doesn't wear hijab. Your sister doesn't want to wear hijab. Are you going to go and blast her? Are you going to go and constantly... And it's a situation where if you do that, she's going to run away, or she's going to just leave your home, and you live in the West and the laws make it such that she can just go and do whatever she wants. So you're blasting her for doing something haram is going to have a very negative consequence. And you can very clearly anticipate that. So what should you do? You should encourage her in other ways. You should not cut off your relationship with her, because if you're the only kind of positive influence she has in her life, then if you just alienate her, then that's it. It's like she won't have any other source of Islam or Islamic guidance in her life. So you have to be diplomatic. You have to be gentle. You have to encourage her in ways that are going to encourage her to have the right result. That's with her personally. But if then you're going and you're like speaking about the issue of hijab in public and teaching Muslims about the requirement of hijab, how important it is, how necessary it is, the dangers of abandoning hijab, the sins that you accrue, the consequences, the moral decay that comes from abandoning modesty and hijab. If you don't teach that, then that's going to be corruption. You're corrupting Islam. You're distorting Islam. You're watering down Islam. That's a disaster. So people confuse these two things, like your public dawah versus interpersonal interaction with people that you know personally that are in a very particular context. The problem with compassionate imams is that they take that interpersonal approach and they apply it to their public platforms. This is wrong. And this is why, like, you have people that come and say, don't judge. Like, Islam teaches me, don't judge. I can do whatever I want as long as I feel good about it. So this is an important distinction to make. Yeah, so with the kids, I have to hold them back. My kids, when they see Halloween decorations, it's like they're personally offended. We go like in a neighborhood and there are Halloween decorations on the houses. It's like they take personal offense to Halloween decorations. So tell them, like, okay, they're non-Muslim, so we have to call them to Islam. We have to do dawah. But yeah, I mean, that's the result. Like, we don't have this problem of, oh, they fear missing out. Oh, my kids they feel like they're missing out on what? What is so amazing about Halloween, by the way? Like, when it comes to Eid, our kids are having way more fun than anything that you could have on Halloween. By the way, not that I'm saying that my whole job as a parent is a fun coordinator. Like, my whole life is about making sure my kids are having fun nonstop. Like, unfortunately, I think some Muslim parents have this attitude. Like, my whole job is to make sure my kids are having fun and are being enriched and are enjoying life to the max. Yeah, I want my kids to have fun. I want my kids to enjoy. But then I think about previous generations. Like, my dad was telling me that when he was a kid, the toy that they had, like, his toy was like a piece of metal. Like, it's just a piece of wire. That was his toy. Like a piece of, and then you can like make the wire into like something and play with it. Like, that's his toy. Like, that's my grandparents were not really concerned about creating a fun environment for their kids because they're busy, like, trying to make ends meet, trying to keep the family afloat. And if you go further back in time, like there's not the technology. Like mothers would have to wake up early, even before Fajr, to start cooking the meals for the day. You didn't have a lot of this processing that comes, like, for example, rice. Rice, you buy rice from the store, it's already cleaned now. In the past, you had to clean rice by hand. Go through the rice and pick out any kind of pebbles, any kind of debris in the rice. The rice hasn't been processed. So if you're doing that, you're making bread. Sometimes you have grandparents who would have to make bread. You're living too far to be able to buy anything. The mother's whole role is cooking and cleaning and taking care of the babies, not to be like a fun coordinator, like, oh, let's have a bonfire and invite a professional storyteller to read us professional stories for Halloween or November's Eve. So yeah, so that's why I had to share with you my thoughts on this parenting advice, larger themes of moral development, a moral sense. And yeah, I think if you do things the right way in terms of raising your children with a sense of izzah for the deen, you won't have these problems. There won't be a sense of missing out or a sense of, oh, what is going to happen if my babies don't go and celebrate Halloween or Christmas. Or this is like a very bougie type of middle class worry, like, oh, do my kids feel like they're missing out? Do my kids feel like they're missing out from the dominant culture? It's projection, like I said. It's projection because they themselves feel like they're missing out, and they're projecting that onto their children. And it's a shame. Like, if you have izzah, you're not constantly looking to imitate the kuffar. You're not looking for tashabbuh, like opportunities to imitate the kuffar and just pinning some technicality to allow you to have Halloween. You're not looking for a technicality because you're not even concerned. Like, who cares what the kuffar are doing? Like, who cares? It doesn't matter. Like, I'm not interested in that. I don't get anything. I don't get anything from it. I have my own thing. I have my own life. I have my own religion. I have my own practices. This is nothing comparable to it. There's nothing that rivals it. There's no alternative that could come close to satisfying me deeply on the level of my soul, at the level of my essence, as what Islam gives me, as the religion of my prescribed to me by my Creator. There's nothing out there that is going to draw my envy or make me even slightly curious, like, oh, what do they have? That might be good. That might be something nice for me to indulge in. There's nothing that is tempting me in that way. Muslims as a whole, collectively, as an ummah, we're suffering from this problem of tashabbuh, that we are so suffering from such an inferiority complex that we have to imitate everything. Okay, we don't have democracy, but we have halal democracy. It's known as shura. Oh, we have democracy in Islam too. It's called shura. We have and we have feminism too. We have feminism in Islam too, and we have separation of church and state in Islam too. We have secularism in Islam too. We have capitalism in Islam too. We have LGBT support for LGBT in Islam too. Remember that whole fitna where you had all these compassion imams and institutes, Yaqeen Institute, Yasir Qadi, all these guys saying that, oh, well, we can support gay marriage, we can support LGBT rights. It's technically allowed. It's technically allowed. Why? Because we're not saying it's halal to sodomize another man. We're not saying that that's halal. We're not saying it's halal to go through gender surgery, transgender surgery. We're not saying that that's halal, but we can support their right, so technically it's okay. This is coming from a deep place of inferiority, a deep place of they have it and we want a version of it too. We want a version of it too because our whole sense of worth depends on having a version of it. Because that's the only thing that's valuable and amazing in this world is what the kuffar have done. These ideologies that the kuffar have, liberalism, secularism, feminism, rights for everyone. This is the regime, the best regime for human happiness, as some of them, these compassionate imams said. It's the best regime for human happiness. So that's where all the value is. And Islam can only be valuable insofar as it imitates those institutions, those ideologies, those values. Islam can only be valuable and important insofar as it can duplicate. This is the disease that we're suffering from as an ummah. So how can you have khilafah? How can you have sharia? Like that, isn't that the objection that all of these khilafah skeptics bring up? Like someone like Yasser Qadi again, or Hatem al-Hajj, or whoever, when they say that, yeah, we can't really have a traditional Islamic marriage structure with Islamic law, with patriarchy. We can't really have that. We can't really have a modern Islamic state. It's actually impossible because that's what Wild Halak says. It's an impossible state. So you can't really do that. You can't really have an Islamic state. The best we can do is like a democracy that we have. Like we just be a good Muslim in a democracy. Yeah, it's because of this deep sense of inferiority that creates a lack of imagination. You can't even imagine a different world. You can't even imagine that Muslims are practicing their deen as legislated by Allah. You can't even imagine it because it would require departing from the model that the kuffar have set, the template that the kuffar have set for you. You can't even imagine an alternative to that. And if someone suggests it, if some idiot like Daniel Haqiqatjou suggests it, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's delusional. He's following this pie in the sky utopian vision of a khilafah and implementing the sharia and implementing traditional Islamic law. He's delusional because we clearly know that that's infeasible. It's impractical. It cannot exist. Why? They literally cannot imagine it. That's how chained they are to the dictates or the models, the ideologies that the kuffar have set, that disbelievers have set. This is a very big problem. We have to be able to break free. We have to rediscover izzah, rediscover a sense of self. Can we have a sense of self, for God's sake? Can we have a sense of we are our own people, we are our own religion, we are our own way of life, and we can do things. We can do things. We can be in a way that's not dictated by the structures that have been set for us. It's like you're still enslaved, like you're still colonized. You're mentally colonized. I mean, that's the phrase that's used to describe this bigger phenomenon of just being mentally caged. And it all starts with Halaloween, or Halaloween is one of the symptoms on the level of parenting. Okay. That's the end of my rant. Now let's go to your comments, your super chats. Brother Saeed says, Salam Daniel, Walaikum salam. I'm a khatib at a local US masjid and I'm doing my best to spread your ideas and content. May Allah honor you and keep you with us, and we continue to benefit. You're not alone. Haqiqat, bring Haqiqat. I mean, Barakallahu fikum. Thank you so much for that note. Spreading the ideas in the masajid. That's interesting. So I'm sure that you're getting some backlash, maybe. I mean, that's what I see, unfortunately. Maybe in my localities, that there are certain ideas that you can't really discuss as a khatib. That's why I'm banned. I'm not allowed to give khutbahs in my locality, my city, because there are certain things that you can't talk about. You can't go on a rant about Halloween. You can't talk about maybe even the subject of tashabbuh bil kuffar. Like, that's a very important concept in Islam. Can you really have a khutbah on that topic? In some places, it's explicitly banned. Like, you actually cannot talk about that subject. But may Allah reward you, brother. Thank you for your super chat and your very kind and generous words. I appreciate it. Yeah, and your point that we're not alone, that's correct. We are not alone. The Muslims who they have izzah and they want to change their circumstances, they want the next generation to be better and stronger Muslims, stronger believers. We're the majority. We might be the silent majority, or we might be repressed and blackballed and disenfranchised because of these liberal powers and these sellouts and the dawah mafia or the compassionate imams. But we should always know that we're the majority and we have to assert the truth. Brother Muhammad, thank you very much for your generous super chat. Says, your work is super important. May Allah protect you. Ameen. Thank you, brother, for your generosity. Reptilian Lord says, I read the book you recommended, Views on Womanhood from Mustafa Sabri, and found it excellent. Could you do a book review or stream covering the book? Yes, I've had the intention to do a book review on that for quite a while. I'm looking for the book. It's not near my desk right now, but it's a good book. I highly recommend it, and I will do a stream, inshallah, soon on it. But good recommendation. Last word says, you want to know how Saturnalia, the pagan holiday, became Christmas? That's literally what this woman did to Halloween, turning it into November's Eve. Interesting point. Yeah, so a lot of these holidays, they evolve. The meaning and significance of them evolve, but it's still marking time, like celebrating a specific time. That's what's key. If you change the name, if you change the practices or the rituals, you're still marking time according to a standard that you shouldn't accept. This is why it's problematic. If your time is like the way that we organize time, the way that we organize our year, the way that we organize our month, our week, that has a huge effect on our state, spiritually, our mentality, the way that we think, the way that we talk, the way that we live our lives. The way that we organize time is very significant for how we live. So if we are marking time according to disbelievers, and we're marking time according to their calendar, their way of segmenting the passage of time, that will have negative consequences on us spiritually, mentally, socially, how we live our lives. It's a very basic, fundamental point. We should take things back to Islamic holidays. We should refer things back to the Hijri calendar. We should... another way to do this, actually, is to really understand the seerah and when different events in the seerah happened, and talking about those events in the Sirah corresponding to the Hijri dates. So that's something that if you're also a local khatib or an imam, I recommend doing. Like, okay, well, this is Muharram. What happened in Muharram that is significant, that's important. This is the month of Safar. This is the month of Dhul Qa'dah. What are the significant things that happen in these months in the Sirah? So that the congregation, the Muslims, are orienting their year, their sense of passage of time according to Islamic events. If Mesa says, if you send your child to an Islamic school and have a strong Muslim community around, then it's out of sight, out of mind kind of situation. Creating a similar holiday defeats the purpose of Islamic lifestyle. True, I agree with that. Reptilian Lord says, what do you think of Foucault's work on critiquing modern psychology and power structures of surveillance and control? What utility does it have? Yeah, Foucault has good critiques of surveillance, knowledge production, how power can change our conception of knowledge. Those are Foucauldian critiques. So they do have some utility, but they can also be taken too far. So you have to evaluate his ideas on a case-by-case basis. Like the mass surveillance state to control human behavior. Sahad says, I was imam for 5 years in a supposedly conservative masjid. Jihad, gender roles, imitating in holidays, etc. Almost anything at all about Islah of women would lead to a huge problem with the male board. Yeah, unfortunately, this is the reality of many of the big masajids in the United States and the UK to a certain degree as well. BXZ, thank you for your big super chat. Says, I'll watch after work. By the way, your debate with Apus saved me from liberalism, virus, and from the brink of kufr. I owe you big. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, brother. Very happy to hear that. I'll always appreciate your positive comments on the stream. Muslim Boogeyman, our moderator. Shout out to Muslim Boogeyman. How to delete sheikhas from the internet. Well, they have freedom to spew their nonsense, so. Don't they celebrate Halloween in Saudi? Yeah, I mean, that's how pathetic things are, right? We're trying to get our children not to fall into these kufr practices and Halloween, Halaloween, and then in very close to the holiest places on earth, you have people dressed as witches and goblins and ghouls. Thank you, Samad. You cover family in the realm of husband and wife to a high standard. Would love to see you cover more of these parent and child topics. Yeah, inshallah, if I get triggered by more of these sheikhas. Can a free woman agree to be a sex slave? No, she cannot. As the child, can you give advice on dealing with parental rulings which negatively impact your life? As a college student, I'm not allowed to use the gym or change my diet. So when you are an adult and you're not as dependent on your parents don't have the right to dictate every aspect of your life in Islam. You have certain duties towards your parents to respect them, to take care of them, to do the best that you can to keep them happy. But like any type of relationship, any kind of authoritative relationship, there is the potential for abuse and the potential for taking advantage. any relationship where there's a hierarchy. So if you have a parent-child relationship, the parent is the authority over their children. There are situations where parents are abusive. Same for husband-wife. In a husband-wife relationship that's patriarchal, traditional, Islamic, the husband has authority over the wife, but the husband can abuse that authority and mistreat his wife. And that's something that is haram. It's something that's not allowed. Obviously, we have to define abuse according to the Sharia, according to Islam. And there's significant differences between what the feminist ideology considers abuse versus what Islam considers abuse. Similarly, with the parent-child relationship, there are certain kinds of requirements that Islam has that children owe to their parents that, according to liberalism, is considered abusive, but is not actually abusive. Just like I mentioned in the stream, like a parent has the authority to say, because I said so. You do it because I said so. I don't have to give you a reason. And the child, like the young child, has to obey. That's not abuse. That's not abuse. Or like restricting your children, like even preventing them from going out, preventing them from leaving the home, or requiring them to dress in a certain way. That's considered coercive control or abusive according to standards of liberalism. But in Islam, we know that that's not abusive. That being said, there are things that even Islamically are considered a misappropriation of, of authority. So you're like in your 20s and your parents are still dictating to you what you should eat and what you should not eat, like your diet. What is the basis for that? Now you're an adult. Now you have your own life. You have your own, you might be married. You might be planning to get married soon. Do they have the right to tell you what to eat or not eat? I don't think that that's the case, especially if it's something that is really restricting you in a inappropriate way or unfounded way. So you said not allowed to use the gym. So is there a reason for not using the gym? Maybe they don't want you going to the gym because the gym is a fitna factory. Like the modern gyms that they have, all these women are going to the gym. They're dressed inappropriately. Maybe they don't want you to go to the gym for that reason. Maybe they're worried about a certain health condition that you have, and they don't want. They're worried about your health. So, what exactly is the reason for this? But as an adult, you have a certain degree of ability to decide. As long as you're not under their roof. If you are under the roof, then you should prioritize. Building your life, pursuing your goals, pursuing what you want to do. I assume that you're a man, that you're a male. If you're not, if you're a female, then you should prioritize getting married so that you will be under your husband and your husband is going to allow you to eat, according to what you like to eat or exercise according to how you like to exercise. Any tips for dealing with overprotective helicopter parents in general would be appreciated. You can talk to your parents. Like, you can see like where they're coming from. Is if they are overprotective, that means they are very worried about you. They are insecure. And it's a dangerous world that we live in, and they don't want to lose you. So how can you reassure them? How can you make them feel that you will be there for them, that you're not going to abandon them? How can you make them feel that you really love them and care for them, and that you're taking the precautions necessary to be safe? You have a responsibility to convey that to them and to get through to them on that. That will ease some of their anxiety. Yeah, helicopter parents. Yeah, that means being overprotective. No Genius of Islam episode. We're still working on it. Still working on it. from compassionate imams to geopolitics to compassionate imams again. For full circle, mashallah. Good to see you talk about topics when I came across your material, waiting for the next outrageous take, inshallah. Not gonna read that super chat because I might get the stream banned. This is not related either. Okay. That's 2 hours of streaming. My brain is fried. What are your thoughts on the current situation in Syria between HTS and the Druze? So the situation is that there's clashes happening in the south of Syria involving the Druze. And the Druze are generally, they have pro-Israel elements. So the Syrian government, HTS-aligned government, is trying to send tanks and send troops to the south to control the situation. And then Israel is bombing these tanks and bombing these troops to prevent intervention against the Druze in the south. So the south of Syria is basically occupied by Israel, and the Syrian government is not being allowed to intervene. And this is the inevitable result. This is the inevitable result of what happens when you ally with the United States and you normalize with the United States. Israel feels no hesitation to just bomb Syria at will. Wherever they want to do, they'll do it, because they know there will be no countermeasures. There's not going to be any kind of counter response to deter them from doing whatever they want in Syria. Iran is not going to do anything because Syria has cut off Iran and declared Iran as an enemy. Russia is not going to do anything. America is not going to do anything. Turkey is not going to do anything. So where is the counter response to Israel just bombing Syria whenever they want, occupying Syria within 20 kilometers of Damascus? Where are the consequences for that? Israel didn't do this under Bashar al-Assad because they were worried about the Russians and they were worried about Iran taking measures to defend that territory. So Israel wouldn't invade and occupy. But now that Syria has decided not to ally with any of Israel's enemies, instead they've allied with Israel's main benefactor and supporter, there's going to be no counter response. So Israel will continue to do whatever they want in Syria. What Israel ultimately wants is for Syria to be divided up into 3 countries: a Sunni majority country, an Alawi country in the west, and a Druze-dominated country in the southwest, or southeast rather. And this is the Balkanization of Syria. Syria is just going to be divided up. That's what Israel wants, to keep these small ethnic states that they can control. That's the future of Syria. And yeah, that decision was made in December and November when HTS decided to normalize with the United States and ally with the United States. So that's the future that we're looking at for Syria. Expect much more of Israeli intervention in the country. It's sad, but I told you so. This is what I was warning about back in December. Okay, guys, that's all I had for you today. Hope you enjoyed the show. Inshallah, we're going to have maybe another episode later this week. I'm not sure, but it depends on the video that I'm working on now that I want to release. It's going to be more of a technical video about fiqh and aqidah. What's your aqidah, bro? That's hope any of you fans of aqidah will enjoy it. So that's coming up. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter. The link is in the description below. And that's all I have for you today, inshallah. We will see you next time with another episode. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, leave your comments, share the stream, and we will see you on the next one, bi'idhnillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.